everybody, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Post. I'm Sid Rosenberg for OpenSports.com and, of course, the National Football Post. Let's welcome in Joe Fortenbaugh, my main man, the great fantasy expert at NFPost.com, to capture all of the crazy action from week number 9 in the National Football League. Joe, how are you?
Doing very well, Sid. How's everything going with you?
Everything's going very, very well. Some very strange fantasy outcomes on Sunday, Joe. Running backs finally ruled, but the tight ends also delivered. There's not going to be many weeks when guys like Olsen, Winslow, and Witten outscore names like Wayne, Colston, and Jennings. How about that?
No, very, very rare. The main reason with Greg Olsen's outstanding performance, Cutler was targeting him late in the games. Arizona had such a big lead. They were sitting back a little bit, and Chicago was forced to throw the ball against the nickel defense. So Olsen was playing pretty well. Don't expect to see that much more in the future. Same thing with Kellen Winslow. The good news with Winslow is that Freeman, as a rookie, is going to look to make checkdowns and target his tight end. Winslow is a very athletic player. He runs the short, intermediate crossing routes that are perfect for Josh Freeman. But Freeman's a relatively inaccurate passer when it comes down to it. So look for some good weeks from Winslow, but some bad weeks as well. He'll be inconsistent.
I agree with that. And by the way, the Buccaneers have the Dolphins coming up this weekend. Joe, slim pickings on the waiver wire this week, but there are a few names out there that can help. Liddell Betts and rookie quarterback Josh Freeman, you just mentioned, top the list. What can fantasy owners expect out of these two? You talked about Freeman. What about Liddell Betts?
Well, Liddell Betts right now is in a pretty good situation. Running back Clinton Portis suffered a concussion this past weekend. He might not be able to go this Sunday, which would mean Betts gets the start. He's not a very dynamic running back in that he can hit the home run and pile up a ton of yardage, but he is the type of guy, hey, at this point in the season, very rare to find starting running backs on the waiver wire. He ran for 70 yards on 15 carries and a touchdown this past weekend. He's the type of guy that could come in and help out in a flex spot for owners that are in deeper leagues. In addition, look to wide receiver Andre Caldwell from the Cincinnati Bengals. 29 receptions on the season. However, he has seen 41 targets. And with the broken forearm, wide receiver Chris Henry suffered this weekend. Look for Caldwell's role to be increased in the Bengals offense. Josh Freeman's going to be a hot name after the 205 yards and 3 touchdowns he had this past weekend, but he completed just over 45% of his passes. It was a soft Green Bay defense that did not play very well. This is going to be an offense that continues to progress and opens up for Tampa Bay. Freeman's going to have his struggles. Stay away from him for the time being.
Joe, let's talk about Chief running back Kobe Smith. Larry Johnson, no longer a Kansas City Chief. I know Jamal Charles is the starter for Kansas City, but what about Kobe Smith getting some carries in Kansas City?
Well, he just came back from injury. He got a few carries this weekend. I believe it was only about 4. Charles carried the workload. Neither running back was too impressive, but Charles had some plays in both the running and passing game to show his versatility. Smith's going to continue to get some touches. The question is whether or not he'll be good enough to outperform Charles. So owners are advised to keep their eye on him because if something happens to Charles or if he doesn't play well, Smith's going to be the new starting running back.
Joe, speaking of Larry Johnson, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Larry Johnson was one of the best running backs in football not that long ago. Now he's looking for a football team when he does sign on, not if. When he does sign on, what kind of fantasy value will Larry Johnson have at that point?
I'd continue to stay away from him. There's a chance that he goes through somewhat of a rebirth and he's rejuvenized by a new team and there's some motivation and, maybe 1 or 2 games he performs well. But this was a guy averaging 2.7 yards per carry in Kansas City. Clearly he was unhappy, but he doesn't have the breakaway speed. He can't break tackles anymore. He doesn't have that open field burst that used to get him out to the second level and get him down the field for the big fantasy points. I'd stay away. The upside's relatively limited. He's got a lot of tread on his tires.
Here comes the best part of the show, Joe. It's time to buy or sell. Here we go. Number 1, we're going to lump the first 2 together since there could be a little sophomore jinx going on. Buy or sell Falcon quarterback Matt Ryan or Raven quarterback Joe Flacco.
I'm buying both of them right now. The value's perfect. Starting with Matt Ryan, his first 4 games were very, very good this season. The last 4 have started to fall off. He's getting sacked more. He's throwing more interceptions. He's been a little more inconsistent with his passing, and he's throwing for less yards per game. But Atlanta still loves to throw. They've got some favorable matchups on the schedule. Same thing with Joe Flacco. He started to fall off a little bit, but this is a Ravens team now that can't rely on their defense. They're going to have to play offense. They're going to have to throw the football. Ray Rice gives him that dimension. Look for Flacco in certain starts on certain weeks. Not a consistent starter every week, but he's the type of guy that can fill in good matchups.
Joe, number 2, they say one man's trash is another's treasure. 2 touchdowns for Chris Chambers in his Chiefs debut after the Chargers cut him. Buy or sell Chris Chambers in Kansas City.
I'd buy him if I was an owner that needed a wide receiver in a very deep fantasy league. Chambers stepped up and had a very nice game. He only caught 3 passes, and he didn't see a lot of targets, but he did make 2 of them count for touchdowns. With Dwayne Bowe as the number 1 wide receiver in Kansas City, coverage is going to be rolled in his direction. That's the same situation it should have been in San Diego with people keying up on Vincent Jackson. Chambers was never able to step up there. Maybe now that the distractions are behind him, he can make some plays, but it's still very early to consider him a reliable starter.
Joe, Lawrence Maroney seems to be getting the bulk of the carries in New England. Buy or sell Maroney for the first place 6-2 Patriots?
You got to let him like him right now. I'd buy, but keep in mind, Sammy Morris is going to be coming back. He's going to steal some carries. Fred Taylor, there's still the possibility he might come back at some point, although it's very unlikely. You got to keep in mind, Maroney's going to get some touches. New England's still very pass first. You can use him in certain situations, but there are going to be times where he's inconsistent. So I'd buy him for the time being, but keep your eye down the road.
And finally, we talked about it just a little while ago. Buccaneer quarterback Josh Freeman about to make his second start. Likes throwing to Kellen Winslow. You remarked on Winslow earlier. But in the end here, buy or sell on Buccaneer tight end Kellen Winslow?
Buying on Winslow only because this is going to be a quarterback that's going to need to throw. Tampa's going to play from behind late in a lot of games. They're going to need to throw for 4 quarters. They actually lead the NFL in second quarter pass-to-run ratio as of the current moment. Clearly, that's because they're not winning games. Winslow's going to see targets as Freeman struggles to get the ball down the field. I still like Kellen Winslow.
Fair enough. Thanks so much, Joe. As always, terrific information. Nobody better than you. We'll see you again on Thursday for more fantasy coverage right here on the Fantasy Football Post. As always, great job, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sid.
You got it, pal. Remember, you can also follow Joe on Twitter. He's at Joe Fortenbaugh. That's B-A-U-G-H for more great fantasy updates. And, of course, read his great writing each and every day at thenationalfootballpost.com. For my good friend Joe Fortenbaugh, I'm Sid Rosenberg. Good luck in your fantasy games. And, as always, enjoy the football.